My name is Dorothy Mae Henderson, and at 73 years old, I never imagined I'd be telling you this story. But sometimes the most unbelievable things happen to ordinary people like us, and I believe my experience might help someone else who's going through something similar. It all started 5 years ago when my son Harold brought home Priscilla Whitmore. She was a pretty little thing, I'll give her that. Blonde curls, bright blue eyes, and a smile that could charm the paint off a barn door. Harold was absolutely smitten, and honestly, I was happy for him. After his divorce from his first wife, Margaret, I thought he deserved some happiness. But you know what they say about first impressions. Sometimes they're dead wrong. If you're enjoying this story so far, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Stories like these don't tell themselves, and your support helps me share more real-life experiences that matter. The wedding was beautiful, held right here in our little town of Millfield. I wore my best navy dress, the one I'd saved for special occasions, and I welcomed Priscilla into our family with open arms. Harold had moved back into the family home after his divorce to help me with the upkeep, and I was grateful for the company. The house had felt so empty since my dear husband Chester passed away 10 years prior. At first, everything seemed perfect. Priscilla would help with the cooking, and we'd sit on the front porch in the evenings, talking about this and that. She had opinions about everything, from the way I arranged my doilies to how I kept my garden. I thought it was just her way of trying to fit in, so I smiled and nodded, even when her suggestions didn't sit quite right with me. But slowly, things began to change. It started with small comments. "Dorothy, don't you think this wallpaper is a bit outdated?" she'd say, running her fingers along the rose pattern I'd chosen with Chester 30 years ago. Or, maybe we should modernize the kitchen. These old appliances are so inefficient. I tried to be understanding. Young people see things differently, I told myself. But then came the day she suggested I might be more comfortable in the basement room. "It's cooler down there in the summer," she said sweetly, "and you won't have to climb those stairs as much. Think of it as your own private apartment." Harold seemed to think it was a wonderful idea. "Mom, Priscilla's just looking out for your well-being," he said when I expressed my hesitation. "And we could fix it up real nice for you." Against my better judgment, I agreed. What choice did I have? This was my son's wife, and I wanted peace in the family. The basement room was actually quite lovely once they finished with it. They installed new carpeting, brought down my favorite chair, and even set up a small kitchenette. I had my own bathroom and everything I needed. For a while, I convinced myself it wasn't so bad. But then Priscilla started bringing me my meals on a tray, instead of inviting me upstairs for dinner. "You seem so comfortable down here," she'd say. "I didn't want to disturb you." The visits became less frequent. Days would pass without seeing Harold. When I asked Priscilla where he was, she'd always have an excuse. "He's working late," or "he's out with friends," or "he didn't want to bother you since you were resting." I began to feel like a prisoner in my own home. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in October. I had gone upstairs to get something from my old bedroom, some photographs I wanted to look through. As I was coming back down the basement stairs, I heard the distinct sound of a key turning in a lock. I rushed to the basement door and tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. "Priscilla," I called out, knocking on the door. "Priscilla, the door seems to be stuck." I heard her voice from the other side, clear as day. "Oh, Dorothy, I'm so sorry. I accidentally locked it when I was cleaning. I'll get Harold to unlock it when he gets home tonight." But Harold didn't come home that night, or the next night, or the night after that. For 3 days I was trapped in that basement. Priscilla would slide food under the door, stale sandwiches and lukewarm soup, and claim she couldn't find the key. "Harold must have taken it with him," she'd say. "He'll be back soon." I had a small window near the ceiling that looked out, onto the backyard, but it was too high and too small for me to escape through. I felt helpless, scared, and utterly alone. On the fourth day, I heard voices upstairs. Loud voices. Harold was back, and he was arguing with Priscilla. "What do you mean she's been locked in there for 4 days?" I heard him shout. "I told you, I lost the key. I've been taking care of her the whole time." "Taking care of her? Mother, are you all right down there?" When Harold finally opened that door, I was weak from stress and poor eating, but I was also angry. Angrier than I'd ever been in my entire life. Don't forget to subscribe to hear how this story ends. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Harold was horrified when I told him what had really happened. Priscilla, of course, denied everything. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd been frantically looking for the key, that she was just trying to help. But I knew better. And deep down, I think Harold did too. That night, after Priscilla had gone to bed, Harold and I sat in the kitchen and had the longest conversation we'd had in months. I told him everything. About the gradual isolation, the way she'd been keeping him away from me, the lies about where he was when I asked about him. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, and I could see the pain in his eyes. "Because I didn't want to cause trouble between you and your wife," I said. "I thought maybe I was just being a difficult old woman." "You're not difficult, Mom. You're my mother, and I should have been paying more attention." We talked until dawn, making plans. Harold was going to confront Priscilla, and we were going to set some firm boundaries about how I was treated in my own home. But Priscilla was cleverer than we gave her credit for. The next morning, she was all tears and apologies. She claimed she'd been under tremendous stress, that she'd made mistakes, that she loved me like her own mother, and just wanted what was best for everyone. She even suggested family counseling. Harold, bless his heart, wanted to believe her. Men often want to believe the best about the women they love, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. So we tried counseling. Dr. Patricia Fleming was a nice woman who listened patiently to all of us. But Priscilla was a master manipulator. In those sessions, she painted herself as the devoted daughter-in-law who was just overwhelmed by caring for an aging mother-in-law. She spoke about my confusion and my tendency to misremember things. I watched my own son begin to doubt me. After 6 weeks of counseling, things seemed to improve on the surface. I was allowed back upstairs for meals. Priscilla was sweet as pie whenever Harold was around. But when he wasn't there, the mask came off. She would make little comments designed to make me question my own memory. "Dorothy, are you sure you remember that correctly?" she'd say with a concerned frown. "You've been so forgetful lately." She would move my things and then act surprised when I couldn't find them. "Oh, that's where you put your reading glasses," she'd say innocently. I wondered why you'd chosen such an odd place. She was gaslighting me, though I didn't know that term at the time. The worst part was watching Harold pull away from me. Priscilla had convinced him that my episodes, as she called them, were becoming more frequent and more concerning. She suggested I might need to be evaluated for memory problems. I felt like I was losing my mind and my son at the same time. But then, something wonderful happened. Something that changed everything. One afternoon, while Priscilla was out shopping, and Harold was at work, I was sitting on the front porch when I saw my neighbor, Mildred Appleton, working in her garden. Mildred was about my age and had lived next door for 40 years. "Dorothy!" she called out. "I haven't seen you much lately. How are you doing?" I walked over to the fence, and before I knew it, I was telling her everything. About the basement, about Priscilla's behavior, about feeling like I was losing my son. Mildred listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said something that gave me hope. "Dorothy, I believe every word you're saying. I've seen things." "What do you mean?" "I've seen how differently that girl acts when Harold's car is in the driveway versus when it's not. I've noticed how she talks to you when she thinks no one's watching. And honey, there's nothing wrong with your memory. You're sharp as a tack." Mildred had been watching. She'd seen Priscilla's true nature from her kitchen window. More importantly, she had an idea. "What if we set up a little security system?" she suggested. "My grandson Tommy works with those computer gadgets. He could install some small cameras that record everything. Then you'd have proof." It took 2 weeks for Tommy to set everything up while Priscilla was away on a weekend trip to visit her sister. He installed tiny cameras in the living room, kitchen, and hallway, places where they wouldn't be noticed but would capture any interactions between Priscilla and me. I felt like a spy in my own home, but I was desperate. I didn't have to wait long for results. The very first day after the cameras were installed, Priscilla showed her true colors. Harold had left for work, and within minutes, she was standing in front of me with her hands on her hips. "Listen here, you old bat," she said, her sweet voice replaced by something cold and ugly. "I'm tired of pretending to like you. This is my house now, and you're just a burden Harold can't seem to get rid of." I sat there, stunned by her venom, but also relieved. The cameras were recording every word. She continued, "You're going to start staying in that basement more often, or I'm going to make your life so miserable you'll wish you were dead. And if you try to tell Harold about this conversation, I'll just say you're having another one of your confused episodes." For the next week, I endured her verbal abuse, her psychological manipulation, and her threats, all while knowing that every moment was being recorded. Make sure you subscribe to see justice finally served. This story is about to take a turn that will restore your faith in what goes around, comes around. The confrontation happened on a Friday evening. Harold came home from work to find me sitting in the living room with Mildred, Tommy, and a laptop computer showing clear video footage of Priscilla's behavior. Harold's face went through a range of emotions as he watched his wife reveal her true nature: shock, disbelief, hurt, and finally, anger. When Priscilla walked through the front door at 6 o'clock, she found all of us waiting for her. "What's going on?" she asked, immediately sensing the tension in the room. Harold stood up slowly, his face pale but determined. "Priscilla, we need to talk." "About what?" she asked, but I could see her eyes darting to the laptop screen. Harold played one of the recordings. We all watched as Priscilla on the screen called me an old bat and threatened to make my life miserable. The real Priscilla's face crumpled. First, she tried denial. "That's not me. Someone doctored that video." Then, bargaining. "Harold, you don't understand the pressure I've been under." Then tears. "I didn't mean those things. I was just frustrated." But Harold had seen enough. He'd heard his wife's real voice, seen her real face, witnessed her real character. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "I want you out of fine," she finally screamed, dropping all pretense of sweetness. "I never wanted to live in this old house anyway, and I certainly never wanted to deal with your senile old mother." Those were the last words Priscilla Whitmore spoke in our home. She packed her bags that night and left. Harold filed for divorce the following Monday. The proceedings were swift and decisive. The video evidence made it impossible for Priscilla to claim she deserved any part of our family property. But the real victory wasn't in the divorce settlement. It was in getting my son back. This house. Tonight. "You can't be serious. I'm your wife." "You were my wife," Harold corrected. "Now you're someone who emotionally abused my mother and lied to my face for months." Priscilla looked around the room, probably hoping to find some sympathy, some support. Instead, she found 4 faces looking back at her with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. Harold and I spent many evenings talking about what had happened, how we'd almost lost each other, and how we could make sure nothing like this ever happened again. He apologized for doubting me, for not seeing what was right in front of him, for allowing someone to mistreat me in my own home. "I should have trusted you, Mom," he said. "You raised me better than that." "You loved her," I replied. "Love can make us blind sometimes. The important thing is that we found our way back to each other." And we did. Harold moved his things back upstairs. I reclaimed my proper place, in my own home, and we became closer than we'd been since he was a young man. 6 months after Priscilla left, Harold met Eleanor Branson at the hardware store. Eleanor was a widow about his age, with grown children of her own, and a gentle, genuine nature that was the complete opposite of Priscilla's false sweetness. When Harold brought Eleanor home for dinner, I knew immediately that this was different. Eleanor helped with the dishes without being asked, complimented my pot roast recipe, and asked thoughtful questions about the family photographs on the mantel. Most importantly, she treated me with genuine respect and kindness. Harold and Eleanor were married the following spring in a simple ceremony in our backyard. I wore my best lavender dress and felt genuine joy as I watched my son marry a woman who truly loved him and who welcomed me as part of their family. Eleanor never once suggested I move to the basement. In fact, she encouraged me to redecorate. The upstairs bedroom, however, I wanted it. "This is your home, Dorothy," she said. "It should reflect your personality." Today, 3 years after that awful experience with Priscilla, I'm happy to report that life is good. Eleanor and I have become genuine friends. We work together in the garden, share recipes, and sit on the porch in the evenings talking about everything under the sun. Harold is truly happy for the first time in years. Eleanor brought out the best in him, his humor, his kindness, his strength. Watching them together reminds me of the love I shared with my dear Chester. As for Priscilla, I heard through the town grapevine that she moved to the city and married again within a year. I can only hope she learned something from our experience, though I suspect she probably didn't. Some people never change. But this story isn't really about Priscilla. It's about standing up for yourself, even when you're older, even when people try to make you doubt your own reality, even when it feels like you're fighting an impossible battle. I learned that age doesn't make us helpless or voiceless. Sometimes, it takes decades of life experience to give us the wisdom and courage to recognize manipulation and fight back against it. I also learned the importance of having allies. Mildred Appleton's support and her grandson Tommy's technical expertise were crucial in exposing the truth. Sometimes we can't fight our battles alone. And there's no shame in accepting help from good people who care about us. Most importantly, I learned that family relationships are worth fighting for. I could have accepted the way Priscilla was treating me, could have retreated further into that basement room, could have let her slowly separate me from my son. But I chose to fight for my relationship with Harold, and that fight saved us both. If you're going through something similar, if someone in your life is making you doubt your own perceptions, isolating you from people you love, or treating you with disrespect, please know that you're not helpless. Trust your instincts. Seek support from people who care about you. Document what's happening if you can, and don't give up. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of your age. You deserve to have your voice heard and your experiences validated. You deserve to live in peace in your own home, surrounded by people who genuinely care about your well-being. Sometimes the people who hurt us face immediate consequences, and sometimes they don't. But when we stand up for ourselves and protect our relationships with the people who truly matter, we always win something valuable back. Harold and I are closer now than we've been in 20 years. Eleanor has become the daughter I never had. Our home is filled with love, laughter, and respect. And I sleep peacefully in my own bedroom, knowing that I am safe, valued, and surrounded by people who genuinely care about me. That's worth more than any revenge I could have taken on Priscilla. That's worth more than proving I was right all along. That's worth everything. Sometimes locking someone out of your life forever isn't about punishment. It's about protection. It's about making space for the relationships that truly matter, the people who truly deserve a place in your heart and your home. And that, dear friends, is how a 73-year-old woman took back her life, her home, and her happiness. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there who might be going through their own struggle. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and you're never too old to fight for what's right.